millennials or others to work in public service. I have heard a lot of discussion, and I want to see if we have any volunteers that have something that they think is really insightful that they want to share about question 1A about consistent policies in telework. Do we have a hand? Right here, question 11, Mitzi.
Good morning, everybody. We have Mark over here, and he's from DOD, so we wanted to give a DOD perspective. So, Mark? He's gonna kill me.
Yes. I'm not coming to breakfast next year.
This is what happens.
A couple things here. We struggled a little bit with the question, and I'm going to speak for everyone since I was the one that was supposed to speak here. Strategies to inspire millennials, I thought was a bigger question than just telework. And I think there's a lot of tools and techniques. But the question for A, B, and C really talks about teleworking and access and dissemination. So the first part of this, telework, are there consistent policies? I'd venture to say there's a consistent policy, but implementation may be spotty. And interpretations to that are usually unique to the organization and are colored by the organization, which makes it difficult, confusing to a workforce, and the transportability for millennials there would be a bit of a problem. Does the government have confidence in the cloud and security to allow work from anywhere? I would say the answer is yes, and I would speak to it from a DoD perspective because we do deploy, so we have confidence in our people, the men and women, soldiers, sailors, and airmen that are in theater that work in that type of environment, and it is cloud, and I think we need to think about it in that way. I think the security is also something that we continually work with, but I think there's dimensions of security. There's not only the physical security of the data and information we have, but also the access and dissemination, which I think we have a body of work left as a community to kind of work through the access and dissemination of data on the need-to-know basis and how to go do that. And lastly, are we a mobile workforce yet? I'd like to divide that one in two. I think we are mobile, and I think that depends. But there again, I think it is in operations of whether you're a vendor or whether you're in the government. We have people working at home from a government perspective. We have support staff and mission areas that work off-site in that, and the operations there are a bit complicated, and I think that's really where we really struggle in the operations and the implementations of that. And do we need to optimize applications for mobile? I think we always need to consider that, to think about it not only on our desktop, but think about it on iPads, iPhones, on those devices. But then again, that gets you back to security, access, and dissemination. And encryption within pipes and all those things, all those operational matters, I think we continue to still work through. I think we're positioning ourselves well for that. I think we're just going to struggle with that for a few years in the implementations and operations. And I want to thank Mitzi for this 5 minutes of fame.
So just a quick thought that you don't really have to worry about coming here for breakfast next year, because if you do, you'll be really lonely. Anybody else want to share over here? Good morning.
I'm Skyping next year for breakfast. So we actually have a young lady here from Leidos. That is on the backside of the millennials, probably more like, I don't know what, you're a couple years away from
what comes after the millennials, by the way?
I think the X generation, what is it? We're still working on that. Next table we'll talk about that.
The Z generation? We're going to run out of letters. Sorry, go ahead.
So we talk more about, on telework with flexibility based on grade. The type of work that you have to perform, I mean, if you're able to do your patching and some of the other work that you can't get done in the office. I mean, an example I had is we do a lot of patching remotely because the company that works for us is down in Blacksburg, Virginia, and there's no way we're gonna pay them to travel every weekend the amount of money it would cost to do all the patching up in Martinsburg. It also depends on your clearance. There's a lot of individuals that they have no choice, but they have to be in the office every day. They can't be working remotely. If they could, I think it really set a sign that you're going to have empty offices. The agency I used to work at did a mobility study, and they actually changed the entire 8th floor for federal and the bottom floor for contractors. That contractor base down there for mobility is full. The government, they gave them a 50-50, you don't have office space. The upstairs is empty. You know, on a normal Tuesday through Thursday, there's maybe 3 people there, and they're all working from home. So, you know, you're giving people the flexibility. Do you want to work from home, or do you want to work in a you know, stuffy office? And then we also talked about inspiring them, provide flexibility to take care of your personal life. A lot of the millennials are coming out with, and this is not, you know, to say that it's a lot different than it was before, but, you know, a lot of us were concentrating on a family and then building up our careers. Now I think the millennials are, building a career and, you know, trying to make a name for themselves and, you know, try to start from there. And then how managing your people, setting expectations, and remind them of the mission of the agency or where they work. That's it.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Nice work on the first question. Oh, Tony, how are you?
Good, Francis. How are you? Good
Nice
morning,
to see
everybody.
you.
All right, so we took a little bit of a different approach to this.
Shocking.
And we didn't go down. Yes, shocking. I know. I think, yeah. Look at one of the table hosts. That might be why. But so rather than look at A, B, and C, we really looked at the overall strategy to inspire millennials to public service. And so, you know, telework, much like many of our requirements documents that come out, was trying to drive to a particular solution. That telework, flexibility, mobile technology is all that millennials are interested in. And so what we really focused on was promoting the mission of government and the inspiration that goes along with public service. And so there needs to be a media and marketing campaign, engagement in social media that inspires the millennials to protecting the homeland or serving the environment at Environmental Protection Agency or feeding the hungry if you're working at USDA or ensuring that we have the best possible healthcare outcomes. Maybe it's working with the veterans. So that they care about those things and that's what we have to get out there and really drive home. Now, telework, is that something that provides flexibility and they'd be interested in and mobile tools that they're very comfortable? Sure, but that's just a feature treating a symptom of a much larger perception problem that the federal government and public service has. So that was what we focused on. Two quick points. So in addition to the media campaign promoting the success of government, the mission of agencies was to touch them earlier. So more intern programs all the way into high school. So get them and start them in high school where they're getting involved in government and then moving it right up through their college years. Okay, thank you.
There are some great programs like that in the cybersecurity community already that might be able to serve as models for the other types of civilian service.
Absolutely, absolutely.
My other takeaway from your table is that Maria sat down and said, we're just going to do whatever we want to and forget about the questions. But that's just a guess.
Possibility too.
It's a guess.
Yeah, we're innovative.
That's
there
right.
You go.
Well, that's a great way to name it. All right, so we have, we have another one. Hi, Harold. Good morning.
I got to first get turned on.
Well, I'm not even going to touch that.
So we followed Tony and took a little different
Just did whatever you wanted to.
Well, we listened to his table and we just took the other side, a different side, and started to look at how do you bring people into the government? And rather than look at it from an overall campaign, how would a new manager who's now managing people bring people into the government? So Joshua?
Hey, thanks. So, no, we did. We talked about how do we get them in at first, and they said not to undersell the mission, the call to serve. So getting into that as well, the flexibility always comes up very quickly when it comes to government. So government culture right now in most places that I've visited is clock in, clock out, 40-hour work week. Moving to that flexibility of a productivity driven environment is going to be something that will help them to keep challenged and feel more free to find their own challenges and their own value within the workplace. The job rotation also came up, making sure that you continue to challenge them, find ways for them to shorten the time they spend on specific tasks or issues that you're working on, or rotating them between divisions or work groups was a big one. So the flexibility was huge, and we didn't quite get to the telework I was hoping to get to, how we would be able to manage remotely, which is something that, especially in industry, with a sales team that's halfway across the country, or a BD whose customer is also halfway across the country, the managing remotely is a good challenge, and providing that freedom. We briefly discussed the work environment, the space that you bring them into, trying to use space. We had a session, and the term using space as a weapon came up. So finding any way that you can to open up your spaces and provide collaborative environments for them to operate in goes a long way for them to feel that their space is open to, they're not constricted to just their work environment. They're more willing to push themselves to find innovative ways to address problems. So
that's nice. There are a bunch of good ideas there. The one that I think is potentially the most interesting is, well, Harold, come on now, you're heckling the host, please. The most interesting, I think, is the rotational idea, and I wonder if the structures exist for agencies to be able to set those assignments up themselves, or if they have to go through OPM to be able to move people around even within their own organization. I don't know, but yes, Soraya. And then we're coming.
So
who was over here? Somebody over here wanted to go? 14? All right, we'll do 14 and 13 in a minute. Soraya.
So I agree with everything that's been said, and we also took the approach that we looked at the overarching question, and two words that haven't been said: the leadership. Leadership sets the tone of an organization. You want to inspire, you want to motivate, you want to create an environment that's flexible and adaptable to the workforce that you're bringing in. And you have to give them a voice. Mm-hmm. It's not just what we do today, it's continuously listening to what motivates them, what inspires them, and adapting your environment to that. The other thing that I would talk about, rotational assignments. Every time anybody talks about rotational assignments, the first thing everybody says is, do we have the structure to do it? I do it because I choose to do it. I find a way to make it happen. We can do virtually anything we want in government if we're smart and we're efficient about it. So I think it is about creating that environment, finding the opportunities, giving those opportunities, and making it work, as opposed to finding the reasons not to make it work, such as budgets, et cetera. The last thing that I did want to mention is mobility. I hate the word telework because that to me is one of the tools in the toolkit. It's about making our workforce mobile, the ability to work from anywhere, everywhere, to be accessible, and to have access back to the office. So I think that's really the conversation. A lot of people do not like to telework. We were actually talking about that some of us don't want to combine our home with our work. So it's about mobility, and it's about understanding the needs of the employees.
Excellent. Great point on leadership, especially Soraya. Let's go to, I'm superstitious. We'll do 14 first.
So we had a lot of similar discussion here, but one of the brainstorms that we had is, what about a civil service academy like the military academies, or an ROTC-like program in the colleges, to give that opportunity to learn about government, help financially, and build that prestige, and see that positive nature of government at an earlier time, and where you can affect a career, and also, having their peers see, that's, similar to you have in the ROTC, you see those folks in military, in the uniform, on drill or what have you, to have that exposure on the college campuses as well for that career choice. So
that's an interesting concept that people in Congress in both parties have talked about over the years, and just has never, for whatever reason, ever gotten any traction. But there have been so many great arguments made in favor of something like that. What's happening in 13?
Talked about something that nobody's actually mentioned,
Yay.
Which is the very onerous and cumbersome federal hiring process, which is not friendly to millennials. So we talked about some strategies in addition to the things that have been mentioned to make that hiring process more friendly to a millennial who's eager to have impact and do a tour of duty. So we talked about having SLAs where you'd have HR departments commit to specific timeframes, as Rory's, the HR office that Rory's using in the Bureau of Fiscal Service, where they get PDs out and hire within 80 days. And having more transparency in the process so that a young person who really wants to serve could have patience because they could see where they are in the hiring process and how much longer it's expected to take. So those are some of the practical things that I think, even if you inspire millennials through telework and everything else, if you can't hire them in a reasonable amount of time and give them the patience that they need to wait for what will be a great career and a great job, then I think we're missing something important. So that's what we focused on.
That's a great point, and the discernment among people in that age cohort seems to be that there's an equivalence, federal government, NGAs, nonprofits, state and local government, and if one's too hard, we'll do the other. Let's do one more. Let's do right here.
Thank you.
Very interesting. We spend our time mostly on A, which is very good. But I think the word value, are there consistent values / policies? Because policies come from values. So I think that we ought to include that word. Are there some consistent values that we can get and build policies to support it? That's one thing. We talked about collaboration tools that are available. And in general, we felt that it wasn't bad. Telework, I love it. Change the word mobile, that's great. But we in general got to believe that telework works. I think the metrics is going to be where we have to spend just a little more work. But the collaboration tools that we talked about, and I thought it was a great table that's concentrated on A, but remember, values.
Thanks, Ray. So that's going to wrap question 1. We're going to switch to question 2, and we have the table hosts moving, not everybody in the whole room. So let's take 5 minutes to do that, and we'll get started on question 2 in a moment.